Dorian Blake, a brilliant but eccentric book hunter and self-confessed bibliomaniac, heads the small firm Blake & Associates Literary Investigations in San Francisco. From their loft-style office on Clementina Street, Dorian and his teammates track missing manuscripts, authenticate dubious discoveries, and navigate a shadow world of collectors, auction sharks, and occult bibliophiles. Each case is a mystery whose solution hinges on deep book lore, forensic bibliography, and treacherous human motives. Silence in the stacks. A Codex, Chronicles, mystery, bells at closing time. The rotunda clock of the Bennington Athenaeum struck 6 exactly, its 12 brass tubes chiming in ancient Greek intervals that turned every closing shift into a tiny cathedral service. Echoes seeped through galleries and marble corridors, reverberating off oil portraits of generous 19th-century mill owners who had raised the building as a monument to letters and civic virtue. Those long-dead donors seemed to listen, flinty eyes suddenly less stern in the momentary hush that followed each resonant peal. "Last call for checkouts," collections manager Ella Durand announced in her gentle Vermont lilt. She moved among the few remaining patrons, students bent over laptops, a commuter gripping a damp umbrella, a silver-haired genealogist still buried in microfilm, offering each a serene librarian smile. The older man glanced up at her apologetically, as if caught trespassing in time, then began packing reels into their protective boxes. Rain that had threatened all afternoon finally committed, drumming the stained glass skylight in the dome high overhead. The glass depicted Athena offering an owl quill to a young scholar. Water hammered the goddess's gilt sandals, turning the pane's muted colors into a mosaic of liquid light. Every librarian in the building performed the same mental arithmetic. Rain plus closing hour equaled wet coats, squeaky shoes, and extra mopping. Ella alone welcomed the storm. She found the percussion calming, a reminder that outside these storied walls, the natural world carried on indifferent to catalogue numbers. Downstairs, the climate-controlled rare book vault lay behind 2 fire doors and a serpentine corridor wrapped in UV-absorbing glass. Access required 2 employees swiping badges within 10 seconds, a silent nod to Cold War launch protocols, though the stakes were Matthew Paris, not missiles. Ella's partner on duty, security tech Jack Mulligan, had already left for the night to attend his daughter's violin recital, leaving Ella to perform the final census alone. She relished the solitude. Case by case, she verified each treasure. Audubon's Birds of America gleamed beneath argon, a copperplate Dante incunabulum rested like a cinder-black jewel, a mismatched trio of Sappho fragments reclined in a cradle of handmade kozo. The crown, tonight's guest of honor, was a vellum-heavy Peterborough Psalter, circa 1310, its lapis and gold historiated initials burning with defiant life 7 centuries after the monks of Flanders first painted them by candlelight. She logged the final line, P-S-A-L-T-E-R, Peterborough, Foller 1R E32V, loan-in, insurance, £14 million. Her fingertips grazed the page edges, parchment sighed, releasing a musk of lanolin and iron gall ink. For Ella, that scent was the closest thing to eternity she could experience without doctrine. Satisfied, she reached the threshold, turning for one last glance, just in time to see the vault door begin to swing shut of its own accord. "Wait!" She lunged, heels skidding on anti-static flooring. An unexpected gust from the HVAC vents, triggered by the building's night cycle, caught the 5-inch steel slab and nudged it in. Instead of the gentle servo-assisted close, the door slammed with a hollow boom. Gears clanked, status lights flipped from green to red. Ella's ID badge dangled from her hand like a useless relic. Her breath fogged the glass in front of the biometric panel. She swiped anyway, more from denial than hope. The panel beeped a sulky denial tone. That could not happen. Manual bolts required turning from inside the vault with a physical key the length of a knitting needle. The Athenaeum's insurance auditor had once asked, semi-joking, whether a ghost might lock the door. Ella, practical to the bone, had laughed politely. Tonight, the joke curdled. Red strobes awakened in the ceiling. In the security office, 2 stories up, the silent alarm routed automatically to Bennington PD and to Cloth and Rouser Rare Assets, the London underwriters who insured the Psalter. Breathless, Ella phoned Director Henry Kessler and explained what she had not yet allowed herself to believe. The vault was sealed, and she was on the wrong side of the seal. Police arrived within minutes, their wet boots squeaking on terrazzo as they synchronized with building sensors. No motion inside the vault. Thermal imaging reported a stubborn, tranquil 18 degrees Celsius. No heat signatures save the hum of LED fixtures. Nothing alive. And yet, something impossible had happened. Something was alive, somewhere in the narrative, because mechanical bolts do not throw themselves. When the museum locksmith arrived at dawn, he drilled a peephole no larger than a dime through the steel plate, squinting into the cavern beyond. He recoiled. Shelves had collapsed like dominoes, fiber optic sensors in the glass. Display number 7 lay severed in shining ribbons. The cradle that had held the Peterborough Psalter gaped empty. No living soul was visible inside. Scene 1. Fog and Braille. 12 hours and a continent away, neon rain varnished the window panes of Blake and Associates' converted warehouse loft in San Francisco's Soma district. Inside, floor-to-ceiling applique letters spelled "Archives Recovered, Reputations Restored." Between those 2 promises stood Helena Cloth, senior managing partner at Cloth and Rouser. She was seldom seen outside London and never in anything so mundane as jeans. Yet here she was, black trench coat sluicing onto polished concrete, cheekbones set at litigation-grade severity. "I require you to listen without interruption," she announced, accent clipped like scissors. She produced a contract dossier thick enough to stun a mule and slapped it on the teak conference table. "My firm faces catastrophic liability. A vault that locks itself from within. 3 items missing, 0 witnesses. The press is already casting us as negligent swine bathing in premiums." Dorian Blake, founder, former rare book scout, part-time absurdist philosopher, leaned back in a Barcelona chair and spun a bronze drachma between index and middle fingers, a habit he claimed sharpened intuition. "Obliged to listen," he said genially. "Interruptions will be assessed a fee." To Helena's left sat the rest of the Codex Chronicles team. Mira Patel, archivist turned forensic bibliologist who could date calfskin by smell and once reconstructed a burned papyrus using ultraviolet chalk. Leo Zhang, cybersecurity prodigy, possessor of a photographic memory and an allergy to neckties. Clara Reyes, former Interpol extraction specialist whose sidearm, lawfully registered, currently rested on her lap beneath a linen napkin as if part of afternoon tea service. Helena outlined the facts, each clause punctuated by rain tapping the skylights overhead. Total loss value, $23 million. One clue, janitors discovered a tattered Braille diary lodged between the accordion gates of the closed stacks elevator. Braille cells differ in depth and spread depending on slate manufacturer, Mira observed, hands steepled beneath her chin. "Give me the diary. I can probably place where it was punched within a decade and a continent." "It's evidence," Helena replied. "Bennington PD cannot read Braille and are too proud to admit it, but they will not release the book, yet." Leo projected the Athenaeum's basement blueprints onto a smart wall. 2 ways into the vault, he narrated. Main blast door and a dumbwaiter shaft welded shut. Door bolts operate internally by a key and externally by the biometric you saw fail. For the bolts to throw, a key had to be inserted inside and turned. Full stop. Clara ejected and reinserted a magazine with a soft metallic click. Unless someone locked themselves in before closing, staged chaos, then Houdini'd out. "Ella Durand insists she was alone," Helena continued, softening for the first time. But audio sensors recorded faint metallic scraping at 17:38, 11 minutes before lock. The pattern repeats like a metronome, or, according to one bored cop, like Morse. A blind thief knocking code, Mira mused. Dorian caught his drachma mid-spin and pocketed it. His voice dropped into the calm register that meant decisions had crystallized. Pack umbrellas. And anyone with cat allergies, medicate. We leave for Vermont at dawn. The rain outside intensified, as if applauding the order. Scene 2. Bennington bound. Snow still lingered in roadside ditches when Blake and Associates' rented Suburban crested the hill overlooking downtown Bennington. The Athenaeum's spire, Gothic revival limestone crusted with February slush, punched the grey sky like a quill-turned spear. Inside the grand entrance, yellow police line tape fluttered above the service access. Director Henry Kessler paced beneath a reproduction of Turner's Rain, Steam, and Speed. His walrus mustache twitched when he spotted the team. "I've served this institution 30 years, he began without prelude. His bow tie, a rust silk number embroidered with tiny open books, jerked with each agitated breath. Never so much as a ripped dust jacket under my watch. Now the board hints at negligence. They whisper, Kessler and Cloth colluded. I could sue for slander if I had the strength." "Stop wasting oxygen," Clara cut in, not unkindly. "Show us the vault." Kessler produced an iron keyring, hands trembling. "My deputy will accompany—" "No," Dorian countered. "Chain of evidence. You'll wait here." His tone made it less a suggestion than a gentle arrest. The journey down 2 flights smelled of lemon solvent and ozone from deactivated laser detectors. Leo disabled the lobby cameras, replacing live feed with yesterday's loop to avoid questions later. He hummed Debussy's Clair de Lune, his hack soundtrack. At the vault corridor, Clara knelt by the new patch welded over the locksmith's peephole. She flicked iron filings off the grout and sniffed. Cut within last 12 hours. Someone came for a second peek. Inside, past the mag-lock door, now chaperoned by an 8-person evidence seal, the scene resembled a minor earthquake. Steel shelving units had been levered from anchor points, one kneeling against the floor in supplication. Glass fiber runs lay burned in spots, fuse marks tiny as insect bites. The cradle for the Psalter, oak laminated with ballistic plexi, gaped like a toothless jaw. Mira inhaled. Halogen vapors. Someone used a portable coil, induces current in sensor wires until they melt, silent but deadly. She crouched, tracing scorch marks. Leo knelt beside her, scanning with a handheld spectrometer. Readouts spiked at copper residues and, curiously, at lanthanum. Mira's gaze drifted to the tile floor, still dusted with plaster from a damaged cornice. Dots interrupted the grey film, 6-point perforations fashioned by something small and round. She reached out, brushing dust away, until a phrase emerged. "Listen to the quiet. Locks sing," she translated, throat tight with wonder. Someone rolled a Braille stylus across the dust as they left. "Or used a cane with a stylus tip," Clara offered, which would mean they saw through touch alone. Dorian inspected the ceiling vents. One grill hung by a single screw. Behind it, a ventilation duct no wider than a pizza box ran 12 feet before joining the building's main trunk. On its aluminum wall, shiny against years of dust, a plastic tag with raised dots had been stuck like a label maker trophy. Mira stood on tiptoe and read, "Key sleeps beneath snow-white lions." "Snow-white lions," Leo brought up floor plans on his tablet. "Reading room fireplace has 2 marble lions. Gift of the White family, 1891. Pure Carrara, fits." They ascended. Scene 3. Snow-white lions. The reading room was a cathedral of quiet, broken only by the mewl of the antique steam radiators. Murals of Aurora and the Muses curled across vaulted plaster, their pastel robes fading where acid coal heat had once licked the ceiling. On either side of a monumental hearth sat 2 marble lions in regal recline, snowy as newly quarried stone, each with a paw resting on an open marble folio. Clara circled the statues. Where dust had built up under every radiator flange, the space around the lion's plinths looked suspiciously swept. She flicked her wrist and produced a telescoping mirror, sliding it into the 2-inch gap between plinth and oak parquet. Something metallic gleamed. Pry marks, she noted. Thin blade. Mira and Dorian wedged their shoulders against the left-hand lion and pushed. Stone grumbled. With an air-sucking pop, the pedestal pivoted 2 inches, revealing a hand-sized depression and an ancient grease-black lift ring. They heaved, a slab lifted like a hidden chapel door. Chill, earthy air wafted upward. Below yawned a vertical shaft lined with obsolete steam pipes, descending 20 feet to a narrow maintenance crawl space that curved back toward the vault's outer wall. An Edison-era ladder, iron rungs embedded in brick, showed fresh scrape marks. "Lights," Leo murmured. He clipped an LED puck to his belt and climbed down first. The tunnel bottomed at a corridor no wider than a coffin. Someone had recently laid plywood and carpet scraps over the grit. At the far end, where the crawl space kissed the vault foundation, a rectangle had been chiseled through ancient mortar. On the interior face, the steel vault wall featured a makeshift port no bigger than a quarter, edges softened by decades of dust, except the inner lip, bright silver from recent filing. In the rubble lay an electric winch, roughly the size of a lunchbox, spooled with glistening copper microcable. The free end terminated in a medieval-looking vault key wrapped in electrical tape. The coil's housing was warm, its cushioning foam impregnated with the smell of overworked servo. Mira's eyebrows shot up. Elegant. Snake cable through vent grill, guide into lock, magnetically seat, remote turn with stepper motor. After exit, retract key, let door slam. Leaves the target outside, keeps inside sensors calm. Clara found a rust-crusted tin lunchbox shoved in a niche. Inside, 20 spent hearing aid batteries, a Bits brand Braille stylus, and a Laminex security badge bearing the name Miles Waverly. Leo tapped furiously on his tablet. Waverly, Miles Annan, age 68. Retired Athenaeum cataloguer, blind from retinitis pigmentosa. Pensioned last April when funding cuts closed the Braille room he swore under his breath. His disablement letters on a public server. Paid out 3 months of COBRA, no extension. Cold world. Dorian pressed a palm to the chill vault wall as though to feel the heartbeat of the building. Blind ex-librarian orchestrates a heist worth 23 million. Hard to picture him fencing a Chaucer. Maybe he's a stalking horse, Clara suggested. Somebody else rides the horse, collects the goods. Mira knelt again, reading another line punched into a strip of duct tape stuck to a pipe. Girl who listens. She looked up. Waverly left these for Ella. She studied Braille under him when she was an intern. The team exchanged glances, variously skeptical, sympathetic, and intrigued. Scene 4. Waverly's apartment. Waverly's building stood 3 blocks from the river, a red brick Federalist with ornamental fire escapes. The smell of wood smoke drifted from a nearby sugar shack. Vermont's winter evenings carried a sweetness that belied bitter chill. The apartment door was cracked. Clara pushed with her elbow, announcing herself. Inside, a turntable spun at 33 1/3, needle locked in a groove of white noise. The living room was half library, half workshop. Floor-to-ceiling shelves of Braille volumes, a vintage Perkins Brailler on a desk, spools of copper wire, and a soldering station that looked borrowed from NASA circa. On the couch lay Miles Waverly, wrists crimson, box cutter on the rug. His skin was ashen but breathing shallow. Adrenaline shot through Clara. She pressed a towel to the wound, elevating his arm, while Mira hunted the medicine cabinet for gauze. Paramedics arrived in 4 blistering minutes and insisted Clara holster her Glock before they'd let her ride in the ambulance. With Waverly stabilized, Dorian and Leo searched the apartment. On a corkboard above the Brailler hung glossy printouts of Athenaeum security camera angles annotated in Braille dymo tape. Vendor invoices for copper coils were pinned alongside shipping manifests all addressed to a Shell LLC in Burlington. Two names were circled in red wax pencil: Lydia Roon, rare book dealer once expelled from Sotheby's for selling a forged Mallory to a Saudi prince; August Shale, tech millionaire who funded the private pod movement, where patrons pay 5 figures to read first editions inside hermetically sealed capsules. In the kitchen, Mira found a blood-spattered Braille diary identical to the elevator clue. First entry, dated 8 weeks earlier, read, "They said I shelved silence, but silence speaks. I will free the lions for the girl who listens." Girl who listens. Ella again. Waverly had, it seemed, tried to undo his crime by leaving a breadcrumb trail only a Braille reader would notice. Too late. Scene 5. Interrogating silence. Bennington Regional Hospital, room 314, smelled of iodine and wilted carnations. Waverly lay propped at 30 degrees, eyes tracking Dorian's voice, though blank irises registered no light. Mira sat at the bedside, gently resting her fingers on his as they spoke, a deaf-blind courtesy. "Miles," Dorian began, "the Psalter is gone, but still recoverable. Help us, and nobody dies, including your reputation." A tear leaked from Waverly's eye. "I never meant it stolen," he rasped. "Wanted high-res scans. Roon promised to fund digitization for the blind. She said Shale's equipment could scan a leaf without touching, but the equipment was her lie." "You built the tunnel," Clara said, voice soft for once. "Placed the winch, preloaded the key." "She watched, then she swapped crates. Their courier took the real Psalter. I heard the clatter. Couldn't stop them." Leo displayed the copper coil servo on a tablet. Waverly recognized it by description, nodded. "I designed it from salvage. Hearing aid motors. My hands aren't what they were." "Coordinates," Dorian pressed. "Where is Roon passing the goods to Shale?" Waverly swallowed. "Disused Rutland Railway Depot, midnight tonight. I was to receive payment, but I changed my mind. Left clues for Ella. Thought she'd understand." He coughed, voice breaking. "Tell her I'm sorry the lions roared." Mira squeezed his fingers, 3 short pulses. "We will." Scene 6. Midnight at Rutland. Freezing rain slanted across the cracked platform of what had once been Rutland's proud interurban terminus. Skeletal gaslights, long disused, stood like watching sentries. The team arrived 2 hours early. Deploying devices, Leo set wireless repeaters to hijack any cell within 200 meters. Clara chalked exit routes and stashed a medkit behind a crate. Mira mounted a GoPro beneath a rusted signal arm. Dorian walked the perimeter, humming Dies Irae, noting vantage points. At 23:57, showers faded to drizzle. Leo, monitoring on a thermal tablet, saw a single engine heat signature approach. Headlights null as it rolled inside. A white Sprinter with Vermont plates, 1 digit obscured by mud. The driver stepped out, tall, draped in a trench coat, muffled voice on a satellite phone. "Package arrives in 3. A second shape emerged. Lydia Roon herself, auburn hair damp, lugging a waterproof Pelican case. At 003, a second van, black New York plates, back to the bay. The 3 had clearly rehearsed. No handshake, no chatter. Courier scanned Roon's iris with a handheld lens. A soft beep. Time to act. Dorian whispered, "Now," into comms. Leo killed depot lighting, plunging the cavern into moon-sliced gloom. Clara stormed forward, badge and Glock level. "Federal custody! Hands visible!" Chaos erupted. The courier swung a taser. Arcs crackled past Clara, singeing her sleeve. Mira lobbed a flashbang. Thunder and magnesium washed the loading bay in blank white. Roon bolted for the far door, braids whipping. She slipped on oiled rail grease, skidded, Pelican case clattering across concrete into Leo's waiting grasp. He cracked the latches, empty foam. Roon, cuffed and coughing from stun residue, smiled with sable lipstick. "Decoys are cheaper than real sins, love." The black van peeled out, tires spitting gravel. But earlier, while scanning thermal grams, Leo had crept close enough to slot an Apple AirTag into a wheel well. Range was limited, but good enough to ping once every mile from passing cars. The van's trail plotted across his map like breadcrumbs. Destination broadcasting. SH, One Estate, Mount Horican. Scene 7, Mountain of Mirrors. August Shale's estate crowned a once popular ski resort. When the venture went under, Shale bought the entire mountain, erected a cedar and glass chalet with biometric gates, and installed a private gondola for VIP guests who paid five-figure fees to read in heritage pods, oxygen scrubbed, temperature stabilized, and scented with cardamom and wood smoke. Reading as experience. The estate gates recognized only retinal signatures. Leo solved that by replaying earlier satellite phone iris data lifted during the depot stakeout. A 4K projector flashed Rune's captured retina onto a pellicle lens in front of the scanner. Gate clicked open. Clara drove up the switchback using Rune's sprinter, engine still damp from meteorological misbehavior. Inside, drones disguised as snowy owls, Leo's flourish, swooped, broadcasting looped CCTV segments. The library's heart, a soaring atrium, dazzled with LED mirrors that multiplied the presence of books. Under one skylight stood a pedestal supporting 2 volumes under a bell-jar dome, the Kelmscott Chaucer and Shakespeare Q1. Laser curtains danced around them like lethal motorized tinsel, yet the Psalter's cradle was empty. A placard read, "Under restoration," a lie crafted less than an hour earlier, judging by print queue timestamps. August Shale descended a spiral stair in bespoke slippers, whiskey tumbler swirling. His voice carried the polished ease of billionaire TED Talk cadence. "I'd say welcome, Ms. Rune, but clearly you're not she." He eyed Clara's ballistic vest. "Nor are you the FBI, who phone first." Dorian stepped into the room, hands visible. "Possession beats rumor. Let's test that in court." Shale took a sip. "Rune sold me deaccessioned items. See the slips." He produced parchment forms bearing Athenaeum letterhead. Mira scanned the ink. It had barely dried, still smelled of acacia gum. Clearly forgeries done on facsimile-laid paper. She folded the slips into evidence bags without comment. Clara's gaze snagged on faint wheel tracks across the teak floors. "Pedestal moved recently," she muttered. She hooked a finger under the edge. Furniture sliders peeled away, revealing felt still deformed by weight. The Chaucer and Shakespeare had recently travelled. Leo invaded Shale's home server via a hidden WAP behind the bar. Directories labelled Project Silence spilled onto his screen. Among them, a shipping manifest. Container C X4410, weight 19.1 kilograms, temp 16 degrees Celsius, destination Lofoten Archives, Sørvågen, Norway. ETA 5 days. Payload description Psalter, Chaucer, Shakespeare. Timestamp 2 hours 23 minutes ago. "They're at sea," Leo whispered. Clara handcuffed Shale, whose serenity cracked at the clink of steel. "I paid fair," he yelped. "Digital rights, custodial scanning." Dorian laid a calming hand on the millionaire's shoulder. "You paid for an indictment. Enjoy the reading pod at federal detention." Scene 8. Race to Boston Harbor. Blake and Associates no longer flew commercial. Helena Cloth's corporate helicopter, call sign RARE01, lifted them off Mount Horican, rotor blades slicing night and snow flurries. FBI Special Agent Isaiah Boone, briefed en route, coordinated customs intercept at Boston's Conley Terminal. Storm bands rolled in from the Atlantic, tangling air traffic. They landed on a pier minutes before the cargo vessel MV North Saga cast off. Forklifts groaned under floodlights. A refrigerated container, identical to the manifest's listing, dangled mid-air, crane cables swinging. Boone barked into a megaphone, "Hold! Homeland Security search warrant." The crane froze. Its operator, union and unperturbed, lit a cigarette. Agents scrambled up maintenance ladders to the container door, bolt cutters at ready. Leo finessed the electronic seal with a bypass plug. Inside the icy blue glow of LED strips, 3 volumes, each sheathed in Tyvek and secured with nylon webbing. Mira's gloved hands trembled as she sliced straps. Chaucer, Shakespeare, and the Peterborough Psalter. But its outer binding lay intact, while the first quire was sliced at the gutter, pages fanned like a deck of gilded cards. Someone had peeled leaf after illuminated leaf, scanning on sight. Indeed, a high-speed imaging rig was mounted on a rail behind the cradle, flashbulb still warm. Resting on the rig's platen sat a note, Braille punched into waterproof plastic. Books should breathe sun again. Forgive my roar. M.W. Mira whispered. He digitized it after all. Customs seized the container. Roon and Shale would face charges of conspiracy, grand larceny, wire fraud. But Waverly's role complicated matters, a thief or a martyr. In the end, prosecutors, nudged by Helena with quietly lethal efficiency, offered Waverly a plea: 5 years probation, 2,000 hours of community service, most to be served teaching Braille literacy in prison libraries. Scene 9. Binding the Silence. 1 week later, the Athenaeum's vault reopened in a small ceremony. Director Kessler, humbled, cut a ceremonial ribbon before exactly 12 masked reporters and 2 puzzled board members. Ella Durand, promoted to acting chief collections manager, reinstalled the restored volumes under thicker glass and an upgraded, utterly non-magnetic latch system designed by Leo. Mira formatted the Psalter's scans, 18,320 DPI TIFFs, into an open-access edition hosted on the Athenaeum's site, with a Braille-friendly HTML layer. A bronze plaque beside the reading station dedicated the Waverly Nook for those who read by listening fingers. Waverly himself attended quietly, sleeves covering healed scars. He sensed the room's hush, the hum of air handlers, the vaguely animal energy of hundreds of spines. Ella guided his hand to the plaque's raised letters. Tears slid unhindered. Director Kessler cleared his throat. "Mr. Waverly, on behalf of an institution that failed you, I apologize." Waverly shook his head. "Silence failed me, Director. But silence also speaks." Behind the press throng, Dorian tossed his bronze drachma, owl side up. Epilogue, Rain and Resolve. Back in San Francisco, the Soma loft smelled of espresso and wet asphalt. Clara mounted Roon's empty pelican case on the trophy wall, label engraved Decoy of Greed. Mira logged the coil winch under recovered anomalies with metadata: blind ingenuity, copper coil, whisper motor, lesson, empathy. Leo sipped oolong and watched network pings. Someone in Norway's Lofoten Islands had attempted to log into a hidden mirror server, Shale's Dead Man Switch, and leaked 600 gigabytes of high-resolution manuscript scans to an Onion address. In hours, medievalists worldwide would wake to a treasure trove previously locked behind museum walls. He looked up. The lions roared after all. Dorian smiled, dark eyes reflecting city lights. "Locks, sing," he echoed Waverly's phrase, "but sometimes the song longs to be chorus." He slid the drachma across the tabletop where it spun, hummed, and fell silent. Owl gazing upward, Athena's wisdom poised to take flight. Somewhere beyond the skylight, foghorns answered, deep, knowing, indifferent to rarity and insurance, but utterly attuned to the persistence of stories.